dust has settled and we've let it sink in for quite a few days now, but it's time to officially talk about the Backyard Brawl and the big win that it was for the Pitt Panthers over the West Virginia Mountaineers here on the Pittsburgh Sports Now Football Pulse. I'm Nathan Breisinger, joined alongside by our Pittsburgh Sports Now Pitt football beat writer, Karl Ludwig. And, I mean, there's so much to talk about with this Backyard Brawl and where Pitt is situated right now, 3-0 after 3 weeks of play and threatening to go undefeated for the first time in non-conference play and program history, which is a huge feat if the Panthers can get that done against Youngstown State. We'll talk a little bit about the Penguins later on the show, talk a little bit recruiting as well and what this Backyard Brawl win means for the Pitt Panthers on the recruiting front. But got to start with the Brawl. What a game it was. I mean, it lived up to the hype and then some. I mean, all the talk all week long, how it is every single year, the last 2 years that we've had this rivalry return. And then you get an absolutely epic display, maybe even tops that first game in 2022, Karl.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that was an incredible moment for Eli Holstein, for Pat Narduzzi, for the entire program. I mean, it was a classic game. I mean, it was back and forth the first half. West Virginia took control in the second half. They wore them down, but Pitt fought back valiantly. They didn't give up. They channeled the Panther Pit and the home crowd of 66.1 thousand people, and then they got the job done, and that's what matters. I mean, the one thing, I mean, it's awesome to win a rivalry game, but the one thing that doesn't matter is how it's done. Just win the game, you move on, you can brag about it for the next year. Got the job done, great game, great performances. Lots to work on, lots to fix and clean up, but it's hard to leave a win like that unhappy unless you're Pat Narduzzi.
Yeah, when you look at, this iteration of this rivalry, this 4-game span before, they take a break and bring it back again, I mean, you're going to probably circle this one over the 2022 game, and especially where both of these teams are sitting. It kind of felt like a little bit of the 22 game kind of felt similar to the Penn State 2016 game where the rivalry was back. You'd see how it goes. But this one meant a lot more. I mean, Pitt coming off a 3-9 season, West Virginia basically the opposite, 9-4, and Neil Brown was going into the 2023 season on the hot seat, and now the questions linger once again. And if they drop the 1-3, I mean, West Virginia is in a pretty tough spot. But we'll talk a little bit more about what this means in terms of trajectory and expectations for this year for Pitt. But got to talk about the final 2 drives. I mean, once again, for the second consecutive week, you're looking at the fourth quarter and you're saying, oh boy, Pitt's in a really, really tough spot right now. Are they going to be able to find a way? And this team is just different. I mean, we've talked about it over on Pittsburgh Sports Now in a couple of our pieces, but this team is just built differently, and it starts with Eli Holstein and the job he was able to do to lead and build this comeback for Pitt. I mean, you're talking the 30-yard touchdown pass to Dejon Reynolds, or 40-yard touchdown pass, on 2nd and 30, and then the final drive of the game, he's running 3-4 different times, 17-yard scramble, big time to get down deep into West Virginia territory. He put this once again on his back, and he just made plays and again, delivered a beautiful ball to Dejon Reynolds on that second to last drive.
Yeah, well, I mean, it begins with Eli Holstein. I mean, he's the catalyst here. He's the quarterback. He's the star. He's what Pitt has wanted to have here since Kenny Pickett left, and might be 2 years a little too late for that in terms of the previous expectations. But he's here now. He's playing well. But it's not just Eli Holstein. I mean, the last year's team against Cincinnati had almost the exact same chance to come back. Couldn't do it. Last year's team against West Virginia played a great defensive game. Offense couldn't do anything. They couldn't muster any yards, any points, and nothing. It was an embarrassment. So Eli is important. Cade Bell's offense is ultra important. I think he might be just as high as Eli Holstein. But this team is just, I mean, they have a great linebacking core with Brandon George and Rasheem Biles and Kyle Lewis are flying around making plays. They have 2 new cornerbacks and Gandy and Rashad Battle and even Timon Lynam. I mean, it's just all the new faces in this team it's Pitt needed a change. They needed a fresh start, a quick rebuild, and they got one. I mean, it begins with Eli Holstein, but when you can go in the portal and you can find guys who fit the program as well as Pat Narduzzi and his staff did, that's super important. I mean, that's the difference from going from a building year, which was supposed to be happening right now, to a year that could, I mean, it's a little optimistic, but they could challenge for an ACC title right now. The way things are going, the way things are unfolding, um, the two wins against Cincinnati and West Virginia are ultra important, and it's kind of put them in position now to make a run that many didn't think was possible.
Yeah, and to your point, I mean, contending for an ACC title has shifted now into the mindset of the Panthers rather than just maybe going 500, playing winning football. And again, we'll talk a little bit more about this in a little bit, but a lot of it has to do with no matter what the point deficit is. I mean, Pitt has found a way to do it. 21 points in Cincinnati, 10 points with less than 5 minutes to go against your hated rival. And a big thing was, I mean, Pitt knew that West Virginia's secondary wasn't good, and they attacked it. I mean, Eli Holstein just delivered a perfect ball to Dejon Reynolds. Was in triple coverage, maybe not exactly the type of throw you want to make on that play, but you know what? They went for it, and they executed. I mean, they executed that play, and then the following drive, they get the 3-and-out, which, I mean, I think the defense gets a little overshadowed in this game with what they were able to do, and both comeback wins because they adjusted, they settled down, they made plays. Jimmy Scott with a huge sack on 3rd down to set up Pitt for that final drive. And then there's Holstein. I mean, he was throwing the ball, he was doing it with his legs, and I asked Eli about it this past week, about that 17-yard scramble. He gets a little twisted up, thinks there should have been a face mask call on it, but he said it actually gave him a little bit of leverage to keep going, gave him the momentum to keep going, and he got deep in there, and then he gets pulled, and Nate Yarnell has to get in to hand the ball off to Derek Davis. And, the big picture of it is everyone's involved in this offense. I mean, Cade Bell had talked about it. Pat Narduzzi had talked about it heading into the season, but especially those last 2 drives, Dejon Reynolds touchdown. Mumpfield gets his hands on the ball a couple times. Derek Davis gets the ball handed off to him. Eli Holstein's in there. Nate Yarnell is in there. Gavin Bartholomew, who is really quiet for the most part, picks up a big 15-yard to 17-yard chunk on that final drive. So this offense is capable of doing big things because they have so many weapons. It's hard to double cover people. And with Eli being the catalyst, this is the leader you want. We've seen the stats this week across Twitter, the comparisons to Kenny Pickett through 3 games, where this offense is at through 3 games. Sitting 22nd in scoring offense with 40.3 points per game, 14th in passing, and 18th overall in total yardage. I mean, this offense is night and day from what we saw last year.
Absolutely. I mean, it's hard. I mean, not to pile on too much to the former OC Frank Cincinnati Jr., but it's a stark contrast, and not just the scheme, but the teaching, the implementation of different route concepts and run concepts. I mean, it really is night and day. And most of the guys they have right now were there last year, aside from Eli Holstein and Des Reed, 2 huge pieces, but they had Konate Mumfield, they had Kenny Johnson, they had Dejon Reynolds, they had Gavin Bartholomew. The O-line was what it was now last year, which is still kind of work in progress, but pieces were there. They just weren't utilized well. And Cade Bell has come in, and he promised to get guys open, to open the offense up, to move quickly. And so far, through 3 games against 2 tough opponents, he's delivered in spades. It's been kind of surreal to watch this offense move the way it has. I mean, it hasn't happened since the Mark Whipple year in 2021 with Kenny Pickett and Jordan Addison and Taysom Mack and all them. It's kind of surreal to watch an offense that can push downfield almost at will in a minute and a half to win the game, but it can also slow down, and if you have to, it can grind out some yards with Derek Davis. It can pass protect, it can run protect. I mean, it's what Pitt needed. Pat Narduzzi needed to make a change. He saw what happened with Frank Cincinnati Jr. and I think he realized that he cannot continue to just rely on outdated concepts and offenses. And he brought in Cade Bell, and through 3 games, it's been a radical success, and it's been much needed for the Panthers.
Now, we've talked a lot about what the offense was able to do in that 4th quarter, particularly down the stretch there, but there was a period of time in this game between the late 2nd quarter and the entirety of the 3rd quarter that this offense really had no answers. Desmond Reed could not get out of the backfield. Holstein was missing some passes. and the Mountaineers had held Pitt to -2 yards in the third quarter. But, play that, you could look at it as a turning point, but a huge swing in the game is West Virginia able to pick up a first down on fourth down with the fake punt because Pitt sends 10 guys onto the field. Then there's a touchdown called back after Garrett Green connects on a big touchdown play to Hudson Clement. That's brought back on a holding call that Nate Matlack was able to draw. And then West Virginia goes over and has to punt the ball away. And as they're punting the ball away, there's Maverick Gracio, who, as Pat Narduzzi pointed out in the postgame press conference, was someone that maybe you guys didn't even know was on this roster, makes a huge play, untouched in there with the block. And then there's Brandon George, scoop and score. A huge swing, a 14-point swing from the touchdown call back against West Virginia, and then Brandon George's big scoop and score.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to mention the holding call, the called back touchdown. I mean, it was a hold. Like Nate Matlack was dragged down by Milam by his jersey. So I mean, it's a tough play, you can say if you want to, but like it's a pretty clear penalty. So just to get up, just very controversial officiating game, but I mean, Matty Grassi, I mean, untouched off the edge. He rushes all over Straw, the Mountaineer punter, and he gets up there and he blocks it. A beautiful play. Brandon George has the awareness to find the ball, to scoop it up, and it's not always as easy as it looks to go find a ball, scoop it up, and run to the end zone. But I mean, he was as cool as ever. He was collected. He ran it back, and that was the if they didn't have that, then the game probably is lost in the third quarter. I mean, they that was a desperately needed play. They had nothing going. The offensive momentum was stalled. There were some weird trick plays called. The defense was getting worn down. The offensive line was getting worn down. That was a much needed play. And it shows you that it takes a complete team effort to win games like this. I mean, offense had its moments, defense had its moments, special teams had its moments. I mean, you have to have a complete 95-man performance to win the game like that. And Pitt did. I mean, it was impressive to watch. It was impressive to watch a team that many thought would lose before the season come back and play so well, or play so hard, I should say. There lots of iffy play, but it was a kind of win that Pat Narduzzi is known for, a real gritty, grinding performance where that even when it looked like they were going to lose the game, even when it looked pretty bleak, the players who needed to make plays did. They had some unsung heroes, and they got the job done. And largely that I would say the biggest play of the game was that block punt. I would say that was a massive momentum boost, a massive change in momentum, and Pitt needed it in the worst way.
And like any brawls from the past, I mean, some of those plays just going to go down in history. I mean, the Gracio block to George touchdown, the Dejon Reynolds connection for 40 yards, and then of course, the big scramble by Holstein to set up the Derek Davis handoff from Nate Yarnell. I mean, just several big time plays in this game, and for Pitt, they were able to come away with it. And like you said, Carl, I mean, a gritty, gutsy win, and maybe that's just the team that this Pitt team is this year. They're just going to find ways to win. They still will probably lose a handful of games, but it's not a team that's going to be out for the count. They're not going to be, down and out in the second or third quarter. If there's a fighting chance, they'll be there, and that's the type of team that they're going to be. But I mean, the Backyard Brawl was just awesome. I mean, the crowd was into it. Even though some people had left, with 4:55, I think a lot of people stuck around from the Pitt faithful because of maybe that game in Cincinnati was fresh on their minds, saying, hey, this Pitt team might not be out of it. And a lot of people stayed. They got to witness, an amazing comeback from the Panthers and a big win in the Brawl and get bragging rights for the next year until they go down to Morgantown. But something that we wanted to talk about is, of course, the impact on recruiting, as it was, a ton of recruits flooded the sidelines. Of course, the biggest game for the Panthers on the home schedule this year, outside of maybe Clemson in November. There was a ton of recruits there. A lot of guys who were in the class of 2025 already committed. Shep Turk, Mason Heinschel, the QB of the future, and plenty of others, Max Hunt, all these guys. But one of the big names there was Elijah Dotson making his first game day visit to Pittsburgh after already committing over the summer. A 4-star recruit, the biggest recruit in this class from Belleville High School in Michigan. But there are some more suitors knocking at the door. Vanderbilt offering him a few weeks ago, and now LSU has offered Dotson. Karl, what does this sort of entrance from the Tigers mean in terms of his recruitment?
I mean, Elijah's a big time recruit. He's a fantastic player from Detroit, Michigan, but he transferred to Bellevue, a national power. Um, and he's off to a fantastic start in his senior season at Bellevue. I mean, I think his first game, he had 17 tackles, a pick six, offensive touchdown. Game two, 10 tackles, a pick six again, offensive score. I mean, he's a fantastic talent. Pitt has him as a cornerback, which might be a key to his process going forward. But LSU is interesting because his high school quarterback, Bryce Underwood, is a five-star recruit who is currently committed to LSU, I believe. I think
Yeah,
he's a
and he's
current
one of the, and I think he's the top QB in this
yeah,
class, or if
he's
not
a
one of.
really high five-star recruit committed to LSU. I mean, there's a connection there. I mean, it's LSU, it's SEC football, lots of money, lots of prestige, um, and he's interested. I mean, he told PSN today that, yeah, he's committed to Pitt, but he's not going to stop exploring his options. And LSU was going to have a visit probably. He'll head down there. He'll see what they're all about. He'll listen to the pitch, and I mean, I can't predict what's going to happen there, but I mean, there's a chance he could leave Pitt. There's a chance he could decommit and flip to LSU. He could flip to Michigan and Michigan State. I mean, he's a 17-year-old kid who has the world at his fingertips. He could do whatever he wants right now. But I think Pitt is in good shape here. I think his connection with Archie Collins is very hard to beat. There's very strong bond there. I think that Pitt has him right now. He's a DB in high school. Some see a safety, most see a safety. Pitt has him as a cornerback. That could be important. I don't think a lot of schools see him as a cornerback. I think he wants to be a cornerback. He could be a receiver, safety, cornerback, whatever. But I think Pitt's in a good spot here just because he has a strong bond. He has been committed. He has a great family behind him who is, I think, in Pitt's corner. But I mean, you never know. You never know. And flips happen. It's hard to keep an entire class for an entire season, especially a guy like him who I'm sure he'll rise. He'll probably be a high four-star by the time that December rolls around. But Pitt's in good shape here. Having him out there to watch a game like that where the Pitt defensive backs made an impact was pretty important. I think he's a guy who could play it pretty early at Pitt. Um, I think he's a very talented kid, but especially in today's kind of recruiting processes, I mean, you never know. You never know what a kid's thinking. You never know what is being offered, who's being offered what, who's offering what. I mean, so it's hard to speculate. But I think Pitt's in a good spot. I think Pitt is in the pole position still, but it bears watching what LSU and anyone else who jumps into his process can do now. I mean, he had Michigan, he had some big time offers, but
He did.
you never know. You never know. So it's not like Pitt should be afraid here, but it bears watching, and Pitt will do whatever it can to keep him, but we'll see how it goes.
And you mentioned that the offers that he had. He had a top 8 that he picked Pitt over these teams: Tennessee, Purdue, Michigan, Michigan State, Penn State, Kansas, Illinois. I mean, you look at
Top
Michigan,
teams,
Michigan State, Penn State, and Tennessee.
top
Like,
in-state teams too.
yeah, I mean, so it was a big recruiting win from the get-go. He's talked to PSN multiple times. I've talked to him, and the big other thing was Pitt was his first offer. Pitt was his first, at least, Power Four offer, and that really, was true to him. Like he that was really a big deal to him that Pitt has stayed in contact, has been there since day one. So it's been a big thing there. And Archie Collins connection, and obviously getting him on campus was huge, or getting him to the game day visit and winning that game. I mean, to see what this Pitt team could be. And again, I mean, Pitt fans just have to be level-headed with this whole scenario, because I mean, he's most likely going to take a visit to LSU, check them out. But if something happens and they do lose him, who knows? If Pitt has a great year, they could bring in some other guys. I mean, options are still on the table. Again, first signing day isn't until December, so things could happen. We've seen, last minute additions, last minute, decommits and flips. But I mean, it's just it's a long haul right now in terms of the dots and sweepstakes and what maybe LSU could be doing here. But Pitt's in, again, great position with him, and Dotson really does like Pitt a lot, and there's a reason he is committed. But the other big deal was for this Backyard Brawl in terms of recruiting, a lot of kids of the future were there. 2026 recruits, 2027 recruits, but specifically a lot of the WPIL kids in the area that have a lot of big time offers. 4-star kids. You talk about Matt Sig from Fort Cherry, Dayron Barksdale from Steel Valley, and Brendan Alexander for Central Valley. A ton of kids. I mean, this was a big game for Pitt to come on the winning side, Carl.
Absolutely. I mean, it's always nice to win. I mean, kids want to win football. Anyone wants to win. Everyone wants to win. It's nice to win. It's nice to beat West Virginia though, especially. I mean, most of these recruits who are there at the game, they have 3 offers locked in: Pitt, Penn State, West Virginia. Um, those 3 schools they kind of battle for a lot of local kids here, especially Pitt and West Virginia, just in the local area, well, north and south of the city, to the east, to the west. I mean, it's nice to win games. It's nice to show that the offense can score points, the defense can make plays. You have sacks, you have interceptions, you have local kids, Bruce Brookins picking the ball off in his first major chance of college football. I mean, Pitt showcased the guys who can play are going to play, and they're going to play early. I mean, you have a true fresh or a redshirt freshman quarterback. You have guys in the secondary who are redshirt freshmen. You have linebackers who are true sophomores. I mean, if you can play football, you're going to play at Pitt. And to watch them do that against West Virginia in front of 70,000 people, a little less than that, but 70,000 people, I mean, it's a raucous atmosphere. You have the entire city behind you. It's your hometown school. It all you can do from this game is look up and point to it and go, you know what, you were there. You saw us win a big game like that with guys your age, not much older than you. Why not come here and play for us? Why not come play for Pitt, for your hometown school, and be a Chris Brookins, or be a Braylon Lovelace, or be the next guy from your school to come to Pitt and build that pipeline. I mean, there's Central Catholic, Central Valley, Aliquippa. Tons of guys have gone to Pitt in the last 2-3 years alone. So, I mean, I know Whitfield recruiting is kind of a taboo topic these days in terms of just Penn State swooping in the last moment, but it's still an area that Pitt has to prioritize and has to recruit well. And I think there are some guys who are there last weekend now, who watched that game, who are already loving the attention, loving the connection, who will one day choose Pitt and come play at Pitt and play in the backyard brawls in 2029 and 2030, 2031. So I think it was a big win. I don't think it was like a super monumental win because, I mean, it's just a football game, but it was nice to show recruits that you can come to Pitt, you can play early, and you can win big games in front of big crowds and all your friends and family.
Yeah, some of the guys that we had confirmed either prior to the game or that we had saw there, 2026 class that are big time recruits. Matt Sig, we talked about. Brendan Alexander from Central Valley. Dayron Barksdale, who we got a chance to catch up with after the game, and he's that's a top recruit there, top target for Pitt right now. Pitt's pretty much a front runner for him. But of course, still the timeline's still a whiles away for him. David Davis, a four-star guy from Imani Christian Academy. Keyshawn Robinson, who confirmed with us that he was there, but not sure if he was there for sure, but he's a guy that has Pitt in his top schools. So that's a guy to watch out for from Westinghouse. He's out this year with injury, but it's a big-time recruit for Pitt to get if they can, and he's another defensive back. And then you look at the 27 class, Gabriel Jenkins, Larry Moon was there, a ton of guys, Zachary Gleason, Jimmy Kalis was there from Central Catholic. So a lot of different guys there on the radar for Pitt in the coming year. So yeah, big win there for Pitt. Just again to see, this team, this atmosphere, a lot of the kids who reacted to it and, reached out to us, said, the atmosphere was awesome. Got to go in the locker room following the game. Everyone was pumped up. Like, this was a big deal for the team, and now it sets them up momentum-wise for the rest of the season. And let's talk about that. Pitt's 3-0. We talked about it. They can be 4-0 and go undefeated in non-conference play for the first time in program history. And Carl, where does the expectations sort of shift right now for this Pitt football team? A team that was coming in, was 5.5 wins, I think, predicted from ESPN.
If that, yeah, wasn't much.
Where is it now? Where are the expectations maybe looking at now?
Well, I mean, I think the best case scenario preseason, looking at it, was 3-1. I mean, you lose one non conference game against Cincinnati or West Virginia, you win the game you're supposed to. You enter the bye week at 3-1. You're feeling pretty good. I think now the expectation is you don't want to overlook Youngstown State, but that's a game you have to win and win handily and showcase your power, showcase the guys you have, and put it in a full game. As the guys have mentioned, the goal is to have a full 4-quarter game to dominate Youngstown State and to enter the bye week feeling good, feeling great about conference play. So um, they're entering the first game of ACC play against UNC in Chapel Hill, where they have not won a game. So I mean, that's a big test. If they enter 4-0, likely on the borderline of being ranked in the top 25, um, if they can go into UNC and beat a team that has no quarterback as of right now with Max Johnson out, um, they'll be 5-0, probably ranked. They'll have some tough games left. They'll have a good Cal team in October. They'll have a good Clemson team in November, I believe, middle of November, late November. But I mean, Boston College is looking good right now. Who knows what they are? Syracuse is looking good right now. But I mean, it's wide open. It's wide open. I mean, and who's to say Pitt can make a run here? Who's to say that Eli Holstein can't continue this play into conference play? I mean, he's still scratching the surface of the potential. You get Desmond Reed who's a little banged up, healthy. You have the whole bye week to have him rest up a bit, come into strong. You have a strong passing attack, a strong rushing attack. The offensive line gels, um, and the defense. No one's happy with the defensive play so far. The run defense isn't strong yet. The run fits aren't there. The mental mistakes are still there. The corners are still kind of gelling on the outside with the safeties and the overall Pat Narduzzi defense. I mean, there's a lot. They're 3-0 right now with a ton of mistakes, a ton of unhappy people in the building. So I I don't see why this team can't win 9, 10 games. I mean, looking optimistically, I mean they're going to have some tough opponents. Boston College looks pretty solid. Cal's pretty solid. But Clemson's pretty solid. But I don't see why this team can't continue the momentum here, keep rolling, and roll into a high scoring season where they win 9 games and challenge for an ACC title berth. I mean, I the skies that I think it was Gavin Bartholomew this week who said that we're still rolling here, we're still getting started, but the sky is the limit if we can do so. I don't see why not. This team has shown that it should be a contender down the wire here in November.
And I think that's an excellent point that you brought up about this team's not happy. I mean, they've been saying it, Pat Narduzzi, that was one of the first things he said, just that this team's not happy, too many mistakes. PJ O'Brien had to tell him to smile. Coach, we won, smile. Like, we just won the backyard brawl. But no, he's not happy. And you got a Youngstown State team coming in that you cannot overlook absolutely before a bye week. And it's a good thing that, maybe that there's still a lot of mistakes to be built upon, because you look back at the 2021 season, a season that maybe there was still a little bit more left on the table. That year, you win against UMass, you go into Tennessee, you win, and then they fall flat against Western Michigan. They sort of needed that Western Michigan win to kind of kick them in the rear end, a team that was supposed to be really good with Kenny Pickett back. But this team, like, they're winning games, but there's still a lot to be fixed. And, the expectations the bar was set low. So obviously it's a big thing for them to exceed their expectations this year. And they're in a tremendous spot at 3-0. And right now projected to play in the Duke's Mayo Bowl against Illinois from Brent McMurphy on the Action Network. That's the latest updated bowl projections. And so much better than where they were to start the season, because it was pretty low. But standing in their way right now to let them go 4-0 for the Panthers is Youngstown State. And, it's never been easy with this Penguins team, a team that Pat Narduzzi's familiar with, played with briefly. He grew up in Youngstown, dad coached there. But the most recent 3 games have been real tough in this series. 2017, Pitt won in overtime by a touchdown. In 2015, they won 45-37 in a game that James Conner left and ended up having season-ending knee surgery. And then in 2012, they lost to an FCS school. So you cannot overlook this Youngstown team.
Absolutely. I believe it was the Youngstown the win in 2012 was the very first FBS win for Youngstown State. So there's some history here, obviously. Um, and Youngstown State kind of follows the same mold of Cincinnati or West Virginia, where they run the ball a lot. I think it's 45 carries a game for 250 on the ground. So their MO is nothing that Pitt hasn't seen this season, even. So it's a good test. Obviously, Pitt has more talent. They have more bodies. They have more guys. But you can never overlook a team like this. This is you don't want to like jinx anything by looking ahead to the future. You don't want to bring back bad memories of what has happened in the past. But this is a game that Pitt has to show out. They have to come out hot, start fast, like Cade Bell likes to do, and just knock it out of the park. I mean, don't leave any doubt here. If you want to show that you're one of the best teams in the ACC, one of the better teams in the country, you can't leave any doubt here. Come out hot, start fast, and finish the game strong. I mean, I'm sure they'll have a chance to get more guys into the game. They can give Nate Yarnell some real snaps. They can give guys like Montrevious Lloyd some time at running back. They can get the younger guys in at linebacker and safety, but that shouldn't be the goal going into it. That shouldn't be an expectation going into it. The goal should be to win by as much as you can, to come out and start strong, put together a complete performance, lock down the run, limit anything through the air, rack up sacks and tackles for loss. I mean, it just play a Pitt game. Do what Pitt wants to do. Uh, Score a lot, score fast, and wreak havoc on the defensive side of the ball. And I think that will do wonders for confidence entering the bye week and then into ACC play in 2 weeks against UNC.
And it's a big key for Pitt that they've talked about several times, especially Eli Holstein, about playing 4 full quarters and playing a complete game of football. So that would be huge. And, even though Youngstown State coming off a loss against Duquesne, where they lost 28-25, another Steel City team, time of possession, 42-17 to 17-43. So for 42 minutes, Youngstown State held the ball. They averaged 37 minutes of time of possession in the game. So that's going to be another thing is the defense needs to get off the field and the offense needs to maybe sustain a little bit of longer drives than we've seen over the past couple of weeks as the game goes along. And got to keep an eye on Tyshawn King, who was a 1,000-yard rusher last year. Bo Brungard is another mobile quarterback, 194 yards on the ground and 3 touchdowns earlier in the season in a game. So it'll be an interesting test, and Pitt, I mean, really can't sleep through this game. It's a massive one in terms of the big thing of going 1-0 every week. I mean, it's right in front of them. To go 4-0. I mean, they know there's history to be made. Eli Holstein pointed it out. So it's an opportunity for Pitt to take a big one and make a statement win. Obviously an FCS team, but you put up some points, you put up some numbers. I mean, we're really talking about this team fitting into the top 25 potentially, or at least sitting right there outside after the
Absolutely.
Youngstown State game.
Absolutely. I mean, it's an FCS school. It's Youngstown State, but every game counts. I mean, I know it's a 12-team playoff now, but every game counts still. You want to show what you can do every single game. Leave no doubt. Show that Pitt is back. The offense can score points against anyone, any team. It's not just a team that can come back in the fourth quarter. They can come out fast and control the game from start to finish. And that's what Pitt has to do here is show that this is a team that does not mess around with schools that should beat pretty easily.
Well, it's Pitt and Youngstown State coming up on Saturday before we head into the bye week, and then North Carolina following that. So be sure to stay tuned to our entire coverage over on PittsburghSportsNow.com. We'll be there all day Saturday from morning till evening with content throughout the day. So be sure to head over to PittsburghSportsNow.com to check that all out. For Karl Ludwig, I'm Nathan Breisinger. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Pittsburgh Sports Now Football Pulse.